Warning: the Not Real Art podcast is intended for creative audiences only. The Not Real Art podcast celebrates creativity and creative culture worldwide. It contains material that is fresh, fun and inspiring and is not suitable for boring old art snobs. Now, let's get started and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Not Real Art. This is Not Real Art, people. The podcast that celebrates the rise of the creative class and creativity, the creative economy, and all the killer cool stuff that we get to play with as creatives and artists and designers. And today I am joined with my partner in crime. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Mr. Man One in the house.
Finally back. Glad to be back on Not Real Art.
Dude, you've been all over the world since the last time you were here.
It's been that long?
It's been a minute. You haven't been here since Japan, since before Japan and Hong Kong.
Well, I was in a different time zone. That's why.
And then some. I mean, when you're in that part of the world, it's like the time zone is like the least of the changes.
Right. Yeah, man. I guess it has been a minute. Or like an hour. It's been an hour.
Right. Well, that's what happens when you're a busy motherfucker. You know?
I guess so.
So why were you even in Japan?
I was...
And Hong Kong, for that matter.
Yeah, so a few months ago, I went to Hong Kong and Japan, basically to do research, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah, research. Yeah. Right, sure.
Research.
That's what I said when I went.
Yeah, basically, one of my clients who's having me do a bunch of big murals for him, two of the murals are going to be about Hong Kong and Tokyo or Japan, whatever. And he just asked me, hey, so have you been to Tokyo? Have you been to Hong Kong? And I was like, no. It's like, oh, what are you doing next month?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, took him up on the offer.
So it was research. Okay.
It literally was. And I was in Hong Kong for about, 2.5 days, and then Japan for like 3.5 days. And that was it. It was like a whirlwind week.
That's whirlwind, dude, to go that far for just, a few days.
Yeah, so it was...
You must have been pretty beat up.
I felt good.
Yeah.
I thought the jet lag was going to kill me, but...
Right. Not so bad.
It was not so bad. I mean, the only part that I didn't like was I didn't get to paint. I just didn't have enough time. And also my contacts I didn't have any contacts in Hong Kong. I didn't know anyone in Hong Kong until I got there. And in Tokyo, all my friends in Tokyo were out of town or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there was, if you don't know the land...
But you had the client there.
Yeah. So
or a representative
my client met me in Hong Kong, and he had his meetings, and then we'd have lunch and dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I was just walking around, taking photos, getting inspiration, just enjoying the trip and meeting the people and getting feel of the culture and all that. And in Tokyo, one of his employees kind of, hung out with me, and one of his associates, I guess, or whatever, hung out with me and took me everywhere and showed me, whatever I wanted to see in Japan. So yeah, it really was like an incredible, trip just the whole way, just everything,
So wait, so you didn't paint while you were there. You're doing research. The mural that you're doing is for this company. I'm guessing they have offices in Japan or something.
Yeah. So this company has...
What is the company? What do they even do?
So the company's called RTI. Oh, look, I see my homeboy there. Shout out. Yeah, so RTI, they run undersea cable.
Undersea cable?
Yeah, all over the world.
So wait a minute. So these are the cables that basically are in the sea that sort of hook up, the internet?
Yeah, they run the internet from connecting the USA off the Pacific coast to, to Hawaii, Guam.
Wow. And they manufacture the cable?
No, they
lay it.
They lay it in and they run it,
Wow.
So... And it goes all the way to Japan and Australia. So they have partners.
It's a long ass extension cord.
Yeah. So basically it's all of Asia. And so all their partners are in Asia, and most of their business is in Asia. Mm-hmm. And so in their facilities here in Hermosa Beach, I've been doing some murals for them. Mm-hmm. Pretty massive murals. I mean, I'm going to be covering the entire facility by the time this is all said and done. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a great project. It's a lot of fun. And like I said, the main guy, said, "Hey, you want to go take this trip and get some inspiration?" I said, "Sure."
Hell yeah. How much for some inspiration, please? How much for an ounce of inspiration?
Yeah. And now that's what I'm doing. I'm designing the murals, and hopefully in another week I should have something to show them. And yeah, it's one of those things where sometimes it's kind of like a dream client,
sure,
letting me do what I do best, giving me input, but still letting me do my own thing, and then letting me do it on a big scale, and then just providing everything I need so that I can make it happen. And so I think this is, a long-term relationship that we have going on, and it's going to be interesting where it goes and the type of murals and art and projects that come out of here, because like I said, he's very well connected in Asia, especially in China and Japan. And so I think we're going to be able to do some things over there.
So idea for a future episode, we should have the client on the show with you.
Oh yeah, we'll bring him on.
We'll bring him talk about the project.
I'll let him.
Well, because why you? I mean, I know he loves you and loves your work, obviously, wouldn't be hiring you. But I mean, like, what about your work does he love? Like, what was it? Why you? Like, really,
Right.
And that's really be cool to hear.
Sure.
Because I mean, it'd be one thing to hire you for a mural at their headquarters in Hermosa, but they're having you do this stuff all over the world, right? And
eventually, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, that's, as you said, a dream client.
Yeah. I think some of the conversations we've had, I think, is that him as a, CEO of a company this big.
And he owns a company, or is he CEO? Is it a private company or a public company?
Private.
Yeah.
And he owns it. And so, one of the things is that we've talked a lot about, he's really impressed with the way I think in terms of business, not just art.
Yeah.
And how I think about art as a business,
Right.
So he really respects that. And I think, a lot of times you meet artists and they just have a very narrow view of what business is about, or they don't even know anything about business. And I think he really appreciates that I have a different sensibility when it comes to my art.
Yeah.
And how I run my operation.
Oh, wait. He appreciates that you're a professional? Was that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so. No, he does. But we've shared a lot of things about it. One of the things we've talked about a lot is the importance of relationship in developing your business. And he basically says that's his number one thing in all the business he does. It's about relationships.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. And that's, I tend to work with people that I like to work with. I tend to get involved in projects that through different avenues, not just, your typical way of getting an art job, let's say, well, I guess I can say by, most of my collectors become my friends,
Right.
Or they're my friends and then they become collectors.
Sure.
Because I think it's important that my art goes to people that I know, or that at least I've had some kind of dealing with or whatever. But to me, my art is very personal, and it's like, as much as you love to sell art to everybody, it's always more special when it's somebody that or that you get to know, or who takes it to another level, And then with clients, same thing, since I do a lot of client work, I want to meet them and know what's going on with them as a person and whatever,
Right.
So
what was the craziest thing about Japan? And you were in Tokyo?
Yeah, I was in Tokyo. God, there was so many things. You know what? I think maybe not crazy is not the right word, but I think what I was really impressed about was just because I've been to Japan before, but I was in Osaka. So it's a lot less hustle and bustle.
What took you to Osaka?
Exactly 20 years ago, I went to Osaka to teach graffiti to design school. 150 students at a design school.
Shit. Okay. I've known you 15 years. I don't think I ever heard this story.
No?
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah. So I went to, the first time I went to Japan was in 99. And I was leading a tour in LA to some Japanese art students, actually, from OCA, Osaka Communication Arts. And I was in a documentary before that in the mid 90s that was called Graffiti Verite. And this guy, Bob Bryan, who directed it and produced it, it was his vision and came out to be a great documentary about the whole graffiti culture in LA. We did this tour.
Yeah.
And then in LA with these Japanese students or whatever, it was like 2 or 3 busloads of students. And, when the tour was over, Bob Bryan asked me to lead the tour with him. And when the tour was over, the director of the school, said, hey, can you come to Japan and do something with our students? And I was like, hell yeah. So we went over there, and Bob Bryan and I went over there, and we did, I guess, like a week-long, workshop with these students. And that was a really interesting trip too. Obviously being my first time there in Japan. But one of the things was that I didn't understand the culture at all, other than what I've known or read about or seen on TV or whatever. So like one of the very first things I told them is like, they said, well, how do you want to run the workshop? And I said, give me a wall at the school, and then we'll do like a graffiti mural, and the kids, well, not kids, but the students will help me out or whatever. And they said, well, we don't have a wall. There's no walls at the school.
It's a wallless school. And it is an outdoor school.
I'm like, you have hundreds of students, thousands, maybe it's thousands of students.
Yeah, I want to hear the answer.
And you don't have a wall.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, these guys are, okay, Japanese are.
WTF.
Maybe they don't understand what I meant by wall, right?
Yeah, right.
So, of course, I finally get to the school, and sure enough, there's no walls because the school is a building entirely made out of glass, like 5 or 6 stories tall, just glass.
All glass building. So there are walls, they're just glass walls that you can't paint on.
So you
can etch.
Yeah. So I wish you just got it, and then I understood, because when I think of a school, I think of a flat area,
sure,
right, with numerous this was just like one big giant building,
right,
and it was all made out of glass. And I said, okay, I get it now. So we ended up getting like canvases and stuff. We went up to the mountains, beautiful, like picturesque mountains outside of Osaka, and like an outdoor open, area where they had like this, it was covered, but it was open, It was like what do they call that? Like a roofed area or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know what you call it, but it was a really large space in the middle of, it was like a campground kind of thing, right?
Okay.
But it was huge.
Right.
And so all the students, I gave each student, well, we teamed them up like in 3 to 5 students per canvas, and then set up the canvases all over the place. And for a few days, we did a graffiti workshop. And that was really interesting because I wanted them to do like, Japanese fonts and do Japanese words or whatever. And they didn't want to.
They're like, fuck that. We do that all the time.
They were like, this is graffiti. It should be in English. It's American.
It's an American art form.
I was like, no, that's not at all correct. Like, do whatever the hell you want to do. That's what graffiti is about. And they were like, yeah, no.
Wow.
And I couldn't
uptight, these Japanese.
And so I said,
no offense.
how do you spell man one? And they showed me like the letters, right?
Right.
So then I got the kanji, is that what it's called, right? The letter forms or whatever.
Okay.
And so I did it in my style with arrows and stretched it out in 3Ds. And I said, does that still say man one? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's what I'm talking about. See, you just get your letter forms, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And I just couldn't get them to do it. And I think they were really like, maybe it's part of the culture just because, they probably just imagine how many years they spend learning how to perfectly.
Well, I mean, look, I feel like, you were an exotic animal to them, and they were exotic to you, right? So you wanted to embrace their culture, but they wanted to embrace your culture.
Yeah.
Right. So like, they were like, no, English.
So there was like one group of students who did it.
Oh, cool.
And everyone was like, oh, these guys are crazy. They were the outcasts.
Right.
But, they did it. They did like a north, south, east, west piece, and they used all the Japanese, fonts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the only ones who tried it, I was like, that's cool. Well, obviously, since then, the graffiti world has completely changed. And, tons of graffiti artists in Japan now use that type of letter form, like it's no longer, this, weird thing to do it in,
so you
in
started
the native
a trend.
language. I don't know if I started it, but definitely back then they weren't doing it.
Right. Right.
Well, it was funny
because
even in Osaka, I was like, where can I do this or do that? And then there was an area that was called like the American Village or something like that.
Okay.
And that's where all the American brands were.
Sure.
And that was the only place in Osaka where there was graffiti. And it was okay that there was graffiti there. You know?
Yeah.
But everywhere else in Osaka was like completely clean, you know? And I was like, oh man.
It's fascinating.
So here's the link between that trip and my Tokyo trip 20 years later. 20 years later.
Right.
So one of the craziest things, right? You asked me what's one of the craziest things I saw over there. Well, when I was in Osaka in 1999, I remember being in the hotel, and it was like an American hotel, right? Like they always tell you this is an American hotel because, you know, there's actually like a bed and bathroom, and, you know, I don't know what
you can leave your shoes on when you walk in.
And they have American breakfast, you know, whatever that means.
Fruit Loops, that's what that means.
So I remember when I was in the room, you know, changing channels, and, you know, there was a big sumo wrestling thing going on that time and whatever. So then you have your pay channels, right? And like, you know, like a normal place, and anywhere I thought in the world, there's like the pay channels, you know?
Yeah, like for movies and stuff.
For movies, like, right?
Yeah.
And so they had like, you know, obviously you could pay for porn, right?
Oh, sure.
Typical.
I prefer not to.
Right? And
But
so
yes.
they had a Playboy channel.
Yes.
And they had, you know, a Japanese channel,
Uh-huh.
right? Okay. But then they had golf, right?
Yeah.
So pay for golf. Those were the three channels you could pay for. You could pay for...
They really get off on their golf there.
You could pay for American porn, Japanese porn, or golf. And I was like, these motherfuckers are sick. They're paying for golf,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I was like, that's the thing that just freaked me out the most, is that, dude, these guys are so sick that they're willing to pay for golf. And like, mind you, when we landed in Osaka, everywhere we drive around, you would see these golf ranges everywhere. These big giant golf. I mean, they love golf over there.
Right.
So into it.
Yeah.
But I never knew that they were so into it that they were willing to pay for golf on in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So all these years, I'm like, these guys are just sick. That's the sickest
fetish.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay. That just threw me off. Right?
Right.
So here we are 20 years later. I'm in Japan a few months ago, and we're in Tokyo. And so I tell my friend Shota, who was my...
Shout out Shota.
Yeah, man. He showed me the city. And, you know, he's a cool guy because he's Japanese, but he's lived abroad. He's lived in, you know, New York City and everything. And now he's back in Japan. So he knows the outside world and he knows the inside world, right? So it's perfect,
Yeah.
you know? So I started asking him, I said, you know, this was the sickest thing when I went to Osaka that I still can't understand why people would pay for golf, you know, for a golf channel, pay-per-view golf, right? And he said, see, Japanese culture, there's always a reason. We don't do anything for no reason, right? And I said, well, what could possibly be the reason to pay for golf in a hotel room? And he's like, well, you know, businessmen in Japan travel all over the country all the time. It's like if you're in a big company, and most people are, they're traveling all the time. And when you're a traveling businessman, you know, you don't want to rack up all these porn charges on your hotel room. But if you rack up golf charges...
It's the perfect plan.
Oh, man. I was like, now it makes so much fucking sense.
You're
you know?
cloaking your behavior.
All this time, I thought they were just sick fucks. And then I realized they're just brilliant.
Bait and switch. Oh my God, that's fantastic. No, honey, I was not watching porn. I was watching golf. You know they make you pay for the golf channel.
Yeah, you know, every night I watch golf.
This becomes a new way. So next time when we talk, you're like, what are you doing? I'll be like, I'm watching golf.
Watching golf.
And you'll know what I mean.
So that was pretty hilarious. I was like, oh, I see. Yeah, I get it. This was happening. So there was a lot of enlightenment that happened on this trip, you know, because last trip I really didn't have someone hang out with me all the time to explain things like that to me. But, you know, for example, one of the things was that walking around Tokyo, there was this like yellow on the sidewalk. There was this like yellow road that hugged the sidewalk.
Okay.
On the inside of the sidewalk. And it was just like, you know, 2.5 feet wide. And it just, anywhere there was a sidewalk, there was this yellow strip, right? But the curious thing about the strip is that it had like 3 bumps in the middle of it. So when you're walking on the sidewalk, if you stepped on there, you could twist your ankle.
Okay.
If you're riding your bike, your wheel could get stuck in there.
Right.
And I was like, why? It makes no sense because everyone's on bikes, everyone's walking around.
Right.
You know, why do they have this freaking, you know, yellow thing with bumps on it, right?
Yeah.
So I asked, you know, my friend Shota, I go, what's up with this? You know, I see it everywhere. And he said, oh, that's for blind people so that they can navigate the city too. And I was like, Of course it is. You know? And he turns around and he goes, and I say, at the moment, I told him, well, that's what I really like about Japan is that the designers here, even in urban design and landscape or whatever, like all the designers are thinking about the people and the user.
Right.
You know?
And I'm such a cynical asshole that I'm thinking to myself, like, how many blind people do they have?
Right. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Right.
Like,
and so then he says, you know, he goes, well, that's the same thing all over the world, right? Like that's how designers are all over the world.
Right.
And I said, well, if that's true, then in our country, people don't give a shit about blind people.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen, other than some braille here and there on an elevator.
Right.
You know, people don't care.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and that's what I found most intriguing in Japan was just the design of everything. Everything was designed in a certain way.
Right.
And designed to really help like the flow, not just the flow of the people, but actually the people.
Yeah.
Another thing, the trash trucks, right? They were like smaller, more compact. Well, first of all the cars were more compact and smaller, which, you know, of course it makes sense. Smaller streets, more people, blah, blah, blah.
Packed in, super dense.
But I kept taking photos of all these cars, right? Like there'd be like a truck, but it'd be like a tiny truck. There'd be a taxi and it'd be like compact. And it just looked, it was like a cute version.
You're like, how does a
like,
sumo wrestler drive this truck?
And like, it was almost like they're building cars for women, right? Like I could see women saying, oh, that's a cute truck. Oh, that's a, you know.
Right.
And I kept taking pictures of all these cars because I just thought they were just so different. And he said, well, don't you guys have this car over there? And I'm like, no, it's not that size. Like we do have.
It's like 100 times that size.
Yeah. You know? And so even like their garbage truck was smaller,
right?
Much more compact, right? And here's the thing: it played music, like you know, like an ice cream truck pulls up and starts playing music. The fucking trash truck started playing music.
Dude, that's brilliant,
right? Because I don't know, at my house when the trash pulls up, you fucking hate it. It's the noisiest
thing,
right?
It's disgusting.
Yeah,
why not play some fucking music,
right? And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. Like these guys. First of all, their trucks are not noisy like ours. Right. And there's two guys operating it and they come and take the trash out.
Okay. So let's drill down on that for a minute because, you know, I think that a trash, you know, dump truck, you know, when I think about it playing music, I feel pretty strongly that it's got to be death metal.
Yeah. It was not death metal.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
anywho, I digress.
Well, that's probably what they would, you know, come up with here.
Or heavy metal. Maybe not death metal, but it's got to definitely be heavy metal.
Some heavy metal.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was just like, they're just thinking about people. You know, it's like, why does a trash truck have to be so freaking noisy?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of like excuse our mess, but, you know, put up with us for a little while and here's some nice music to soothe your soul.
But it's just fascinating too, because not to extrapolate this to an extreme, but, you know, different cultures handle what we'll call end of life differently.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I might be stretching here, but as I understand it, Japan respects the elderly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
America, I will go out on a limb here and say, I don't think America as a culture really respects. We worship youth, not age, not the elders. Right.
True.
So we also take that same mindset when it comes to our trash and our products. Companies that make products don't think about the end cycle or upcycling or they don't take responsibility for their products or their packaging or their trash after you buy that product.
Right.
And so our whole culture we don't think about how much trash we're putting out there. Therefore, we don't care about the fucking trash trucks or whatever. And in Japan, they just have a much more kind of savvy, sophisticated, refined culture that thinks through the whole cycle of things, whether it's, you know, aging and life or perhaps, you know, products and recycling.
Well, think about this, you know, Japan's an island. So everything they produce is going to stay on that island.
Sure.
Right. And they're limited. Like, for example, water. I remember at McDonald's, they had an area where you can dump like the liquid that's left over. And then another area where you could dump the ice. And then another area where you could recycle the cup, you know? And so even the water is being recycled. That's
amazing.
And reused.
They're deconstructing the elements of that drink.
Yeah.
Separating the ice, the cup,
Right.
And then what was the third thing? Just the
drink.
The drink. Yeah,
Yeah.
the liquid.
The liquid. So, you could, reuse it because, the toilet or whatever. So, yeah, I think there's just in general, the country, the people, they're just like, for example, it's super safe. It's one of the safest countries like in the world. It's got to be, when I'm walking down the street and you see a row, 30, 40, 50 bikes
Sure.
lined up on the street.
Sure.
With no chains or locks on them. I wanted to jack a bike. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
some good bikes. Some good ass bikes here.
They must be free here, But, they didn't even lock up their bikes.
Wow.
In Tokyo, in a city of millions of people.
Right.
Right. And it's just because, there's obviously a tradition, a history of respect. You see it when people talk on the phone. And you can tell who they're talking to because they're on the phone and you'll see them, bow when they're talking on the phone. Because imagine their respect is so ingrained in them that even when they're on the phone, they're showing, respect.
I wonder if they get, how like repetitive motion gives you like carpal tunnel in your wrist.
Yeah.
I wonder if they get carpal tunnel in their neck or their waist from bowing so much.
Maybe they do. I don't know. But it was, I just love Japan. I was, next time I go, I got to stay.
What were people saying about Fukushima? Did that come up at all?
No, I didn't get to talk to a lot of people about.
Yeah, they probably don't want to talk.
They probably don't want to talk about it. But to be honest, I interacted with a few people here and there, but not like an overwhelming amount of people. But there's okay. So my friend Omai, shout out to Omai.
Omai,
and he's a photographer, music guy. I've known him for years. He's interviewed me and photographed me for a lot of Japanese magazines over the years, and just knows everybody. Like if it's hip hop related, like he knows them.
He's in the middle.
Yeah. And he's a laid back, cool guy, whatever. And so I hit him up and he's like, yeah, meet me at this bar, right? He said it's my favorite bar in Japan, in Tokyo.
That's a big statement.
That's a big statement, especially for somebody like Omai. I think his name is Omai because it's how much he drinks. Like, oh my, he drinks a lot. So I meet him at this tiny bar and it's called JBS. And it looks like the JBL logo, the speaker logo,
yep.
JBL, but it's JBS and it stands for Jazz, Blues, Soul. Right?
I like it already.
And walk in, it was a tiny spot. There was probably like 4 people in there when I walked in. But the place is awesome. It's like the owner is this old Japanese guy. I forgot his name, but it's an old guy, right? And he's the owner and the bartender and the DJ, right?
Triple threat.
Yeah. And there's no one else working there. It's just him, right? And he's behind the bar and he's wearing this apron, like a brown leather apron.
Right.
And he's very quiet and is just doing his thing. Well, all the walls around the entire bar are his vinyl collection. Like thousands of vinyl records just lined up around the entire bar.
That's
in the
incredible.
Walls.
So thousands of records just stacked on. It's like wallpaper.
Like wallpaper, it looks like.
Wow.
And obviously they're organized by whatever.
Yeah, he's got it down.
He's got it down, right?
Right.
And the way he's a DJ, but his own version of DJ, which is basically he's a sound selector.
Yeah. Right. He plays what he wants.
He's not doing like mixing and scratching. He just like, oh, right now we're gonna play this. Right. And
old school DJ.
Yeah, like old school, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk.
Right.
He doesn't say anything. Right. And yeah, it was a cool bar, right? It's like, dude, this guy's like bringing out the jams, and he's playing from 60s soul music to 80s R&B and just like whatever he feels like playing.
Yeah.
He just goes and grabs it,
right,
and puts it on, and then he puts the album on the bar so you know what's playing, right?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
He's got such great taste.
Oh, yeah, awesome. And I'm like, this is cool. And so, one of the few people that was in there was this black guy. And when you're in Japan, you see a black guy, it's pretty rare. Let me just say that. It's not
sure. First, yeah, I get that.
Right. So number one, the fact that there's a black guy in here already is cool.
Right.
There's only like 10 people.
The cred went way up.
The cred went way up, right? But of course, I know my friend Omai knows what's going on. Right. So, to me, it's like, no problem. So a couple of girls are taking pictures with this black guy, right? And I don't know who he is, whatever. I don't recognize him or anything. But that's, whatever, like when I went into Osaka in 99, Bob Bryan is also African-American guy, big, tall African-American guy. And he kept getting stopped everywhere. People thought he was Shaquille O'Neal. Everyone's like, Shaquille O'Neal, Shaquille O'Neal.
Jesus.
and finally he like gave into it and just started taking photos with everybody.
By the way, if that happened to him in America, he'd be like, you racist motherfucker. But in Japan,
I think at first he was kind of annoyed, but then after a few days, he's like, you know what?
That happened in China years ago. I was traveling with a buddy of mine who is tall Sikh Indian brother, B2, B2.
Oh yeah, B2, yeah.
And he's taller than I am.
Right.
But he and I both got stopped because two white guys, well, one white guy, one Sikh brother, they're looking, maybe we were dressed, I don't know, but they thought we were somebody.
Right.
So we literally got stopped a couple times because it's like, what the fuck is happening here?
Yeah, it's just exotic, And so when you see a black person in Japan, like people like, who's that? It's got to be a celebrity. It's got to be something, right? But to me, it's, no big deal.
You're like, why is there only one black person?
Yeah, why is there only one black? This is JBS. There should be a bunch of black people in here. Right. So then, my friend, after the guy like kind of walks away or whatever, he's like saying his goodbyes to some girls that he knew there or whatever, and he's taking off. My friend's like, he points at him like he smiling, right? He's like, AZ. And I'm like, AZ? Who's AZ? Like I don't know who AZ is, right? Yeah. And he goes, no, AZ. And I said, no, I don't know who that is. So finally the guy leaves. And my friend's like really shocked that I don't know who AZ is, right? Okay. Like I'm supposed to know.
Yeah.
And so he tells me again, he's like, Showbiz and AZ? And I said, oh, you mean AG? Showbiz and AG? He's like, yeah, AZ. It was his accent. Oh my
God, right.
So this was AG from Showbiz and AG, which is, old school New York rap duo. Yeah. And of course I know who they are, but I've never
You've never heard them spoken of in that accent.
Yeah. And it's not like AG's not, even if I met Showbiz, I still wouldn't know what he looked like, It's not like, if I met, Chuck D or somebody like, I don't know I just know their music,
right?
But I don't really, follow them like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, cool. That's actually a well-known, musician. Mm-hmm. That's cool. And yeah, so this little bar was like a dope spot, and
sounds great.
Yeah. And so, I went to a few different bars because the people I was hanging out with, but here's another thing about Japanese. They love to drink and they love to smoke. So every time that they could drink or smoke, they would, and even the smoking is interesting. Everyone smokes in Japan. It seems like, but on the street, there's designated areas to smoke on the street.
Okay.
So you can't just smoke on any sidewalk or whatever. There's an actually designated area, kind of like they look like phone booths or like little just blocked off areas. And then you go in there and take your smoke break and then you leave. So even that is like, even if you're a smoker, you have to pay attention and be, I guess, what's the word? Like, it's not like here, right? Here's like, oh, I want to smoke here. I want to smoke wherever I want, blah, blah, blah. Over there, it's kind of like, no, I'm a smoker, and so I'll take my smoke somewhere else, Yeah, right. So if you don't want to smell my smoke, then you don't have to.
How many vapors? Yeah, you have vaping over there yet?
I'm sure. I'm sure it was a thing, but definitely the smoking was like everywhere. I was like, man,
You were secondhand smoking a pack a day.
Well, that's the thing. I wasn't.
Good.
That's what was interesting. That even how some
you weren't
smoking,
offended by it. Yeah.
No, because they wouldn't smoke around you.
Right.
Most places you couldn't smoke.
So, but when you were in that bar, there were people smoking in that bar. Like in a bar, you might breathe the smoke.
In a bar, you might, but at that bar, they weren't.
Right.
Let me think of the other bars I went to. You know what? I don't know if they were smoking in the bar, to be honest. I don't remember. Maybe they weren't because I would have probably remembered that. So I don't know if you can smoke in a bar or not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know that everywhere is designated areas, So I think it's just the level of respect they have for each other, for their culture, for their city, it's like multiple layers of respect that is shown time and time again.
Sure.
And it's awesome, when you're coming from a country where people give a fuck.
Right.
Then you're like, yeah, these people are actually trying to make life better. You know?
Curating a civilized society.
Yeah. It's just so amazing. It's like, it's possible.
Yeah, right.
You know? But I think it's possible for them. Like us as Americans, it's impossible. We're never going to get to that stage because, you're talking about centuries of being indoctrinated with that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And, it becomes part of the culture. And our country's too young, too violent, and too fucked up.
Well, it's too fucked up. I mean, our whole country, our culture is supposedly based on personal freedom, which basically is interpreted in so many dysfunctional ways, not at all true to maybe the real definition, or certainly not applied in a way that is respectful to, because if it's about personal freedom, I don't have to give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
There's no empathy in that, you know, and this country, I've been watching this Ken Burns documentary on Netflix about the settling of the West, or the conquering of the West, probably a better way of putting it.
Right.
And, Ken Burns is amazing, but, in this documentary was, again, a reminder, a very sad reminder of just what savages settled this country.
Right.
Savages.
Yeah.
And then last night, for shits and giggles, I finally watched Django.
Right. Oh, you haven't seen it before?
I hadn't seen it before. Right. And obviously, Quentin Tarantino, is a master at what he does and the whole thing.
Right.
And it's exaggerated. Well, it's not really. I mean, it's his filmmaking. It has a very specific style. But the movie reminded me, it was a glimpse into the realities of the South during the slave trade and just how savage and brutal, that time was.
Right.
And, and we know it intellectually, cerebrally.
Yeah.
But when you see a movie like that and you see a slave owner sick 5 dogs on a slave to chew and eat the slave to death.
Yeah.
And you see that and you realize, holy fuck, this is our country.
Yeah.
These are our roots. Right. And it's hard to be optimistic or have a whole lot of hope for a more empathetic, civilized society when your roots are and your history is rooted in genocide and slavery.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, I digress. So, but what about the art scene in Japan?
Yeah. Well, the art scene, it's different. In Japan, the art scene is, how do I say it? Well, first of all, I didn't go to any galleries. I didn't do that at all.
Sure. Yeah. You weren't there for that.
So I don't know what the galleries looked like or the museums or whatever, but walking around and there was a lot of graffiti. I mean, a lot of graffiti. And I'm not talking like pieces or burners or murals. I'm talking about like just tagging. Like it was very interesting how much tagging and throw ups and just the city was bombed.
Yeah.
But all over. But it's interesting because it was all over, and it was allowed in certain areas, you can tell, where like it wasn't being painted over that quickly or whatever. But it was interesting because there would be like the bottom part of a building would be completely tagged, but the street is completely clean. And then the building is, like perfectly maintained, except for the graffiti part, Right. And so, in LA, when you see graffiti all over the city, wherever you see it the most is usually there's fucking trash everywhere. Usually there's, it's like you can see that's where the urban decline's happening, right?
Right.
And that wasn't the case in Japan.
Okay.
It was kind of like the graffiti was, street art. Like the tagging was
refined.
Where they were like, it was okay that people were tagging those buildings.
Interesting.
It probably wasn't, but
yeah.
From an outside perspective, that's what it looked like.
Well, but you know what? That reminds me, though, because I remember somebody telling me about graffiti in China and how graffiti artists were tagging or painting murals or burners or whatever. And they have no context for graffiti.
Right.
And so for them, it was an exotic fascination.
Yeah.
And so people would just come up and watch. Yeah. Like it was sanctioned in some way.
Yeah.
But they had complete impunity because they had no cultural context for it. And it was just this weird, exotic, random thing that they were fascinated by. And I'm wondering to what extent in Japan there's a similar kind of thing. Do they think about it as vandalism?
Well, it's funny because every few feet I would stop and take photos of different graffiti that I was looking at because I liked the juxtaposition of the buildings with the graffiti and whatever. And then a lot of times there was people I knew, right? And so I would just photograph their graffiti. And finally, like after like the 10th or 20th time that I did that, my friend Shota stops and looks over and is like, "What are you doing? Like, why do you keep stopping?"
Right.
And I said, "I'm taking photos, And he goes, "Of what? I don't see any. What are you taking a photo of?" He said, "That's a garage or that's like a wall." I'm like, "No, I'm taking a picture of the graffiti." And he's like, he was so confused. And he goes, "Wait, you're taking pictures of that stuff on there, that writing?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah." And then he just didn't know what to say. Like he just didn't understand it. And I said, "You see that guy right there? That guy's from New York. That guy's from San Francisco." And he goes, "You could read it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you could read it."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh my God," his mind was blown.
Right.
So it showed me that it's just not even on his radar. Like he doesn't even see it.
Sure.
It's so prevalent. It's such a part of walking around in Tokyo, I guess, or whatever, that he's oblivious to it.
I always think of it as like a patina.
Yeah, right.
An urban patina.
Yeah.
And in that sense, right, it becomes textural and becomes kind of the part of the scenery. Right. So it almost blends in and bleeds away or whatever, disappears in that way, right? So I wonder, And then, of course, if you feel like you can't read it, you're like, what the fuck? It's just these abstract forms,
Totally. And, the thing was, when I was in Hong Kong, it was different. In Hong Kong, there was tons of street art. There was murals, there was graffiti, there was paintings, there was characters. There was also graffiti, but there was much more a sense of art on the street.
Yeah. Like an intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. Like from
approach
from local people. But I saw pieces by Deface, London Police.
Right.
I saw pieces by, all kinds of international people. I think so, Hong Kong is definitely an international city, obviously. And there's different, I think, well, Hong Kong was its own thing, and which was another thing.
Well, yeah, Hong Kong, right.
I mean, I loved Hong Kong too, because there was this juxtaposition of like $1 million buildings, made out of glass, and had these crazy LED lights that would light up every night, and just all this crazy stuff.
State of the art shit. Right
next to a building where it's like overpopulated, where there's probably like 10 people living per room,
right?
And there's people growing like trees and plants out of their windows, and there's like broken fans hanging off the building.
Sure.
And the building,
like a slum almost.
It looks like a slum,
right?
But it's right next to like the future.
Yeah. Were the protests going on when you were there?
No, it was funny because I just missed a protest by a couple months because when I was there, everything was good. There was no issues going on. And it's funny because now I'm watching on the news all the protests going on, and it's like, damn, that's hardcore.
I wondered about that. I mean, when I happened to be in Hong Kong years ago, I was working in publishing at the time, and we had printers and distributors over there. But so I had the chance to go, and we were there just before the British turned it over to China.
Yeah, right.
And there was a lot of sort of anxiety about, and at that time, and since then, of course, I think the rhetoric has been, or the conventional wisdom, what have you, has been, one country, two systems, right? They were going to leave Hong Kong unto itself.
Right.
And of course, I heard that and I was like, yeah, right. I wonder how long it's going to take before they start clamping down. And I feel like that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very interesting because there was people from all over Europe there. I mean, I even spoke Spanish to people.
Oh, cool.
There was people from Spain, the people from Argentina, obviously English people, a lot of Australians.
Aussies are everywhere, man.
Yeah.
You fucking go anywhere in the world, there's a fucking Aussie to, talk to. Anyway. On their walkabouts.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it was a way different city, Hong Kong. But I also found it to be very clean.
Yeah.
Now, one of my friends that I met there, this guy Terrence, was like, I'll take you to some places where it's not going to be clean. I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, it's Disneyland or whatever, but compared to LA, like you get out of LAX and then you drive anywhere.
Yeah.
And then even the freeway is going to be dirty. It's going to be litter everywhere.
Right.
And here the streets were so freaking clean and so like taken care of. And that's one thing I just noticed about both Tokyo and Hong Kong was just the cleanliness of the roads. And, even just how they take care of them, wasn't seeing like crazy potholes everywhere or whatever.
Right.
It was like smooth driving, And, again, they care about their infrastructure. They care about infrastructure because they care about the people or trying to make it easier for their people, And for example, in Hong Kong, I was at this shopping center, right? And, they love to shop over there. I mean, someone told me Hong Kong is like, everyone comes to Hong Kong for shopping.
Sure.
But then someone else also told me, oh, you're going to Tokyo? Well, Tokyo is the dream of every shopper. So in Hong Kong, I was in these, really huge mall or whatever. And when you walk outside, you walk kind of across a bridge over the road. And, part of Hong Kong is very hilly. There's like the hills just like all up against.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Sure.
And there's a freaking escalator on this one road that goes like a mile and a half. So it goes a mile and a half. Okay, so in the morning it goes down, and then in the evening it goes up. Yep. Right. And I just thought it was like so crazy because like, you can take the stairs. Yeah. Or you can take the escalator, and it was
sounds like the world's longest escalator.
It's got to be. I'd never seen anything like it.
Right. Right.
And so I went on the escalator, and then you could just jump off and walk up and down. And, there's parts of Hong Kong where it's super steep, Yeah. And you're walking up and down that. But again, like I said,
why couldn't they put an escalator here too? Why does it just have to be one escalator?
But there was an escalator, if it was LA, they wouldn't put a freaking escalator. They'd make you walk, because they don't care about the old people that have to walk up and down,
That's right.
But yeah, there's I think just Asian culture probably, just have a lot more, reverence for elderly people and for I think knowledge and wisdom being passed down and stuff like that. Like we don't give a shit about that over here.
Yeah, but let's not also fall into that trap of romanticizing, other cultures when in fact they absolutely have great things that we should learn from and steal from and apply. But there's like some fucked up shit going on too.
I'm sure there is.
Like what is happening?
Yeah, no, I mean I didn't get to see a lot of the underbelly you're talking about, but I'm sure there is. And another interesting thing was the Uber drivers over there have like freaking Teslas, and we were getting picked up by Teslas like every other Uber driver was driving a Tesla.
That's fantastic. That was my next question. It was like, to what extent did you use Uber? Like,
oh yeah, well, actually, you use it a lot, I guess. But in Hong Kong, the taxis are super cheap,
right?
And so you could just take a taxi wherever.
Yeah.
We got in one taxi where I'm not kidding. The guy had 10 phones on his window. 10 phones, like. They were all going. I don't know what the hell he was doing on all the phones. He had one in his hand, right? He had one telephone in his hand.
Right. There's a lot of burners, man. That's a lot of burners.
He had iPhones. He had Samsungs. He had the whole range. Right. And they were all on and doing different activities. My client actually thought that he's like, dude, I think he's gambling. I think he's gambling on half of those phones.
That's an interesting point. Sure.
The thing was just turning and moving.
Yeah. And if you're addicted to gambling, like that's, that would be easy to do, right?
So some of the phones, so I took a picture of it because it was just amazing. Half of his windshield was just full of like displays, right? Like telephone displays. And so some of them had maps on them. Some of them had like emails and messages coming through. Mm-hmm. Some of them had like just, they looked like a ticker, like just like nonstop. I don't know what the hell that was. Or video games, I don't know what. Yeah. But I was like, wow, that's taken to the next level, I mean.
Yeah, I've never seen anything close to that. I've seen people with maybe 2 or maybe 3 phones, but not 10.
So I don't think they really bust people on texting over there while driving.
Yeah, right.
I don't think it's an issue to text and drive.
Oh my God.
So yes, there was a lot of crazy things I saw, but but it's cool how the juxtaposition of their traditional ways and modern society and where they meet, you know,
Right.
in both cities, you know. And so, like, for example, we went to some temples in Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
and it was great. It was great to, you know, of course, you know, my guide, Shota, kept telling me, like, see that guy right there? There was always some white guy, right?
Right.
Who's like thinking he's doing like Buddhist prayer. Right?
Yeah.
And so he would say, well, you know, that's actually a Shinto prayer. But the guy thinks he's doing a Buddhist prayer. You know? And you only do that kind of prayer in the Shinto temple,
Yeah.
not a Buddhist temple.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, these fucking white people.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's all the same, right? Shit, they can barely tell the difference between the Chinese and a Japanese.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, all Asians look the same. No, they fucking don't. Have you actually ever fucking paid attention to, you know, how different everybody looks there?
Since you brought that up,
Yeah.
you have to watch the new Joe Coy. You know who Joe Coy is? The comedian? He's a Filipino comedian, Joe Coy.
Okay, yeah, okay.
It's a new Netflix.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And he does a whole thing about that.
Oh, good.
Because he's Filipino.
Yeah.
And then he just talks about how Filipinos and Mexicans are the same. And then, oh, dude, it's fucking hilarious. Oh, you got to watch it. It's just, you know, he goes on about Japanese and
Well, and
awesome.
I hope he extrapolates that to white people. I mean, all white people look the same. I mean, they're all fucking fat. Yeah. Americans, I should say. You know, Europeans.
Yeah. So
that's
it's
so interesting.
It was great. It was great going. And you know, here's the other thing too, that every time I travel, I'm reminded of this, right? Is that no matter where I go, when people look at me, they think I'm American. They say, hey,
Right.
blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
And I say, oh, well, no, you're American, you know? And that's the thing that always trips me out, because I am American,
Right.
right? But in this country, I don't get treated like American all the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, where are you really from? You know?
Right.
Oh, you're not American, you're Latino.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not American, you're
Right.
Mexican.
Right.
And whenever I travel, I realize I'm fucking American.
So fascinating, right? Because people outside this country probably understand and think of America as the melting pot, right?
Mhm.
That there are, of course, all skin colors here.
Yep.
That's what America is supposed to be about,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Come one, come all, come you're tired, come you're weary, come you're, you know.
Right.
And yet in this country,
Yeah.
there is this whole half the country that just wants to keep it, you know, white.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I could be there with the black guy, an Asian guy, a white guy. It doesn't matter. They know you're American because of the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you are, the way you act. You're American.
Well, Americans tend to, well, let me clarify. In my travels over the years, there is a large percentage of American tourists.
Yeah.
Not necessarily travelers, because there's very much a distinction between a tourist and a traveler.
Which is true.
But there's a large percentage of Americans that tend to skew on the side of tourists. They carry themselves in a way that is just very obnoxious.
Yeah.
And, you know, oh, you're an American.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't obviously put you in that category. I think, you know, your style, they know you're walking, there's a confidence, there's a, you know, they're like, oh yeah, American, you know, and that's the image we want, right? We want the image, you know,
right. Like, I mean, when I was in Northern Ireland, same thing. It was 4 of us doing a residency there. Myself, another Latino artist, African American artist, and well, he was actually Latino too, I guess, but he looked black, and Indian guy. And everywhere we went, they were like, oh, there's the Americans. Right. And to me, it was like, yeah, we're Americans, but we're also have different backgrounds and ethnicities. And they were just like, no, you're American, you know? And
That's so fascinating.
I remember they were having, you know, we were in Northern Ireland and they were having the riots. It's a yearly thing. Happens all the time. Oh, we're going to have the riots this weekend. I'm like, what the fuck you mean?
Set your watch.
Yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? Oh yeah, we're going to have the riot. You guys should come out and check it out.
Come out for the riots.
And then I'm like, are you fucking nuts?
Yeah.
And they said, don't worry, you're American. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? Like, this is our problem. Like, you can come and watch. And I'm
like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm all right. And so, yeah. So That's crazy.
That's great. I remember this story is reminding me of how many times I've traveled and people ask me, where are you from? And I say America. Yeah. And they're like, aren't you Spanish? Aren't you Italian? Aren't you Greek? Aren't you Persian? Like, it's weird because like people see that. Like, no, I'm American. I'm a mutt. My Pirate Power is an Irish name. I have French. I have German. I have Cherokee Indian. I'm a mutt. I'm very American in that way.
Yeah.
But it is funny how, people see what they see. I mean, I've never been, I've laid over in Japan, never in Narita, and I had lunch there, and I spent an afternoon, day walking around in Narita, but that doesn't count really for a proper trip to Japan. I really want to get there.
Yeah.
Sounds like a special trip.
I mean, next time I go, I got to go at least a couple weeks.
Yeah.
It's just, there's just so much to see. And, I love it. I love it. I think, I come back so inspired after these trips, and Japan is just another place. And then also, I haven't even talked about it, but the one thing I wanted to see when I went to Japan was I wanted to see, there's this giant Gundam, like, my robots, I've been a Gundam fan since I was a kid. And, even though I don't like building the kits, I like the toys. I always like they're
badass.
The magazines and stuff. And so they have this like 1-to-1 scale Gundam that's like fucking 30 feet tall or some shit, And I guess like a few years ago, they did the first one. Right. And I saw it online. I was like, oh shit, I gotta go there. And apparently every year or something like that, they switch it out. It travels. So that first one went to another city or something like that. And then this time they had the Gundam they had up was he's the Unicorn series. So this guy is like, it's amazing because it's like, that's the other thing is the level of detail the Japanese put into shit is incredible. And so just like the kits, the model kits, where you put the stickers on, there's these little tiny stickers that you have to wet and put on the body of the kit, which I always hated doing. I'd always wrinkle them up and they tear. Very delicate. Yeah. Very delicate. Those fucking stickers are on the life-size, Gundam. And I was like, holy shit. And so I was there for like 3 hours, taking photos of it, checking it out.
So it's like a museum?
No, it's outside a mall.
Okay.
And it's just this giant freaking Gundam outside the mall.
Okay.
And then there's a little cafe, a Gundam cafe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you go in there and get coffee, whatever. Okay. But everything in there is Gundam. Right?
Okay.
Like you can get like mugs and whatever.
All right.
And then they have a little Gundam store right behind the actual statue. Little store. You can buy some shit. But then the incredible part is you go upstairs, top floor, and they have the Gundam base. And the Gundam base is, oh man, it's like half museum, half store. And it's everything Gundam ever. So you see
all Gundam all the time.
So you see there's one wall when you walk in where it has every single Gundam that has been created, like in the series. The actual, toy just lined up. It's like a 40-foot wall, and it's just like every single Gundam, series that came out. And then you walk around, and there's like, oh man, I can't even describe it. But they're all the kits that people have built, especially for this museum. So you have like, like a Sailor Moon Gundam to like invisible Gundams to every, there's Gundams that I never even knew existed that are in this museum. It's actually a store, but I keep calling it a museum because,
Well, it sounds like a museum. That's, the way you were describing it, and then you said you were there for like 2 or 3 hours. I thought, wow, it sounds like because like a complex of some kind.
It's just huge, and they're already all built, and I'm just taking photos of all of these things.
Right.
But then the other half is a store, and you can actually buy the kits, right? Well, one of the things that's incredible, that's totally Japanese, is there's a guy building the kits behind the counter, right?
So you can just watch him do it.
And you can just sit there and watch him.
Wow.
Right? And that's what he does 8 hours a day. He sits there and builds the kit. Doesn't talk to anybody. Doesn't answer any questions. He just sits there and is just building the fucking kits. Yeah. Right? And you're like, wow. Well, right behind him or above him is a camera, and it's being live streamed on YouTube.
Of course it is.
So there's actually a Gundam channel, right, dedicated to this guy building the kits at the Gundam base.
That's so cool.
It's
if you're into that.
If you're into that. So, but that's like so Japanese, right?
Yeah.
And it just so happened that they also have like a little exhibition area in the back where they feature a different artist that's associated with Gundam or whatever. And at that moment, they were showcasing my friend Sid Mead,
Sid, shout out Sid.
So,
we got to get him on the show.
Oh, man. So Sid had created a Gundam like years ago. And there's a lot of controversy around it because he was like the first like American to design a fucking Japanese Gundam toy. And was very, very controversial. There's people who say that was the worst design ever.
Yeah.
And there's other people who say that's the best design ever.
Of course.
Right? So it's like you're on one side or the other. There's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground.
No. And of course, I love Sid Mead's work. I'm a huge fan of his work. And to see it all there was just awesome. But it was just like, it wasn't anything original. They were just like prints and, whatever. But what I realized was actually what they were doing is they were advertising an upcoming show that Sid was going to have in Japan. That was going to open like 2 weeks after I left.
Oh, okay.
So like I missed the Sid Mead.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be at that space. It was going to be somewhere else. But I missed this Sid Mead like exhibition. And actually, when I got back, I sent him photos. I emailed him.
Oh, cool.
And I said, "Hey, man, I just saw this in Japan, and I'm sorry I didn't time my travels correctly, and I'm gonna miss your show." And he goes, "Yeah, our show is already up, and it's already broken records.
Wow,
of how many people have come through to see the show." And so I don't know what the final count was, but there was already 30,000 at that point. 30,000 people had already gone through the exhibition to go see Sid Mead's work. And for those of you who don't know who Sid Mead is, he's a futurist designer. He did all the vehicles for like Blade Runner, Space Odyssey. I mean, you could just go down the list of all Aliens.
Prolific.
I mean, he's done so many.
And he's in Pasadena, right?
And he's in Pasadena. That's an incredible thing.
We got to get him on the show.
Yeah, I would love to get him on the show. He's just, when you talk to him, you always learn something when you talk to him.
Sure.
Like he's just dropping knowledge left and right.
Yeah.
And if you can keep up, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's usually at some point you just like, okay, I give up.
He's a bullet train.
I'm like, okay, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore. I thought we were talking about art, and now we're talking about like
physics or something.
Yeah, totally. He goes,
he's
like,
a genius.
He's a genius. And so I'd love to have him on here. But it was, so that Gundam base was like, that was the highlight of my trip.
Right.
Right. And it was so funny because I'm there for like literally like 3 hours, right? Walking around, just checking everything out, blah, blah, blah. And I told my friend Shota, I go, I can't buy any of these. He's like, what do you mean you're not going to buy one of these things?
You've been
He's
here
like,
3 hours.
Yeah. And I said, no, you don't understand. Number one, which one do I buy?
Right.
There's like thousands of toys, of kits to buy here. And I said, but here's the other thing. Like, as much as I love the kits, I love seeing the final product. Like, I don't like building them.
Right.
I don't have the time.
Right.
I'm like, see that guy? He's getting paid 8 hours a day.
Right.
And he's not even finished with the fucking thing. He's been working on that fucking toy for like a week, probably.
Yeah.
I go, I don't have that kind of time.
Right. Right.
I go, I like the Gundam toys.
Yeah.
Because then it's already built.
Can I pay for one that's pre-built, please?
So, of course, he had to embarrass me and go ask the clerk if there was any toys there, not just kits.
Yeah.
And they laughed at me and said, this is only kits.
Yeah. You silly American.
Yeah. This is the real shit.
He's like, I just told you.
Yeah.
Like, I know what's up.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, I know that they don't sell the toys.
He doesn't know what's up.
Yeah. So he had to go embarrass me and is like,
oh my God.
This fucking American wants the toy. He wants it already built.
Yeah, that's right. Drive through convenience, please.
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, you can get this at other stores, but not here.
Not here.
It's only kits.
Yeah.
It's the real shit.
It's the real shit.
Yeah. So I was like, oh man. So then of course later on we went to another store and I bought a bunch of toys.
Yeah, good.
But there there was just no way I could buy just one of the kits. But that was like literally like a kid in the candy store kind of moment,
Right.
And after that, I was like, I'm good. I don't care what we do the rest of the time I'm here.
Right.
I'm good, But it was quite an experience,
That's great to hear. I'm glad you had a great trip. And that's a great way of ending the show.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, so wrap up. Great seeing you, brother.
You too, man.
And for listeners out there, check us out on social and we'll see you next time.
Right on.
Peace out.
Peace.
Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to like this episode and share it with your friends on social. And if you haven't already done so, Please be sure to press subscribe and follow us on IG at Not Real Art Official. We appreciate the support. Sourdough out.